is brought to you by
Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the NBC Network, iHealth Radio, the iHealth channel, with your host, Hurricane H, also the Fitness Fab channel today. And I have a treat today. We've talked a lot of fitness over the years, and today we're going to have a spin on fitness, it's for children, and it's going to combine mind and body together. And I have with me a special guest, the one, the only, Michael Fancher, who's also known as Coach Mike, and he is the founder of MindFit. Coach Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Hurricane. I appreciate it. Love being here.
My pleasure, dude. I follow you and I love your work. And I think you're doing terrific out there, and you're helping a lot. And our kids are our future. And you're taking a whole angle on that. And a lot of people do fitness. A lot of people do different things to assist and coach kids and children these days. But your angle is different. So before we get into all that, Mike, take us back to your story, like how it all started. I know you're also into healthcare, but let's talk about you, and then let's talk about your vision and how you started this whole concept of MindFit.
So MindFit actually started almost 15 years ago, and the company wasn't founded until 2017. But 15 years ago, through a traumatic experience, I have 3 sons, my wife and I. And when my middle child was 18 months old, he actually had a grand mal seizure, lasted 5 to 7 minutes. Turned out it was febrile, but after his seizure, he really was struggling with things that he wasn't struggling with before. So he went from, quote unquote, a normal functioning little boy to really struggling with fine motor, gross motor, sensory integration, things that really kind of came out of nowhere. And I watched a little boy that was, 18 months old, running around all over the place, suddenly have a challenge just stepping off of a curb. A 6-inch curb he couldn't step off of. He'd have to sit down, swing his legs over the curb, and stand back up. He was very shaky. And my wife and I, and God bless my wife, she just, really pushed doctor to doctor, hospital to hospital, like, let's find out what's going on. And I think we went, oh my gosh, pretty much all the way up and down the East Coast. And shockingly enough, we wound up finding a pediatric neurologist in Englewood, New Jersey, Dr. Ariel Shabani, who was finally able to give us a diagnosis. And it turned out that my son had something called cerebellar hypoplasia, meaning he had a slightly smaller or underdeveloped cerebellum. Your cerebellum is responsible for your fine motor, your gross motor, your sensory integration, everything that he was struggling at the time with. And, as a parent, when you finally get a diagnosis and you've been searching for a long time, you have such a moment of relief because you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. We finally have an answer. And then all of a sudden the black cloud instantly comes over your head and you're like, okay, so what happens now? And I remember saying to the doctor, okay, well, now that we know what it is, does he need surgery? Does he need a medication, a prescription? Like, what happens now? And his response to me, and I remember this literally like a movie in my head. I can see it perfectly. And he almost spoke it like words of scripture. Like, it was crazy how much it impacted me. And he said, no. He said, your brain is a muscle and it needs to be exercised just like every other muscle in your body. And one of the ways that you exercise your brain is by exercising your body. And my bachelor's degree was in exercise physiology. So you would think it made perfect sense to me. And I probably looked at him like a deer in the headlights. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I felt like I left his office that day with a diagnosis and a homework assignment. And the homework assignment was, how do we help our son?
Mm.
And, you get back home and then life, kicks right back in. It's a busy day. You're going from therapist visits to school to all different things. And, as he started in school, it turned out the cellular hypoplasia was a difficult pill for elementary school to swallow. And, we had teachers that, were amazing and that really fought alongside us and cried with us and did everything they had to do. And then we had, a lot of other pushback from teachers and administrators and things that just didn't want to take the time. So he was involved in a lot of occupational therapy sessions, physical therapy sessions. And when he was in school, he would have problem with multi-step problems. So you could ask him a question and he could answer it on something he read. But if you asked him a question and then asked him to write it, that transition of going from the brain down to the arm and actually transitioning on a piece of paper was more difficult. But what we noticed was that after his therapy sessions, after physical therapy or occupational therapy, which did a lot of focus on core strength, on strength in general, on balance, he didn't have quite the struggles that he had in school. So I remember one day typing into a Google search, the effect of exercise on learning in kids. And I don't really know what I expected to find. And what popped up were hundreds and hundreds of studies that have been done by Ivy League schools that show that high intensity exercise done before the learning process drastically enhances a child's ability to learn. And I thought, wow, how is this possible? So to simplify it, you think about a runner's high. So people will talk about after they go for a run, they feel so good mentally, emotionally, everything after they run. And I was a runner myself. I was a cross-country runner in school. I was a track runner. Never really associated the two things together until I started researching it. And what I realized is that when you exercise, your brain produces neurochemicals and neurofactors that have a drastic impact on your ability to learn, to retain information, both in short-term and long-term memory. But yet we don't do it like that, right? So if you think about a normal school day for a child, especially in this world of technology that we have today, kids wake up in the morning and so many times the first thing they do is they jump on a screen. It's an iPad, it's a PlayStation, it's Netflix, whatever it is. It's the first thing they do. Then they maybe eat breakfast. Some do, some don't. Mm-hmm. Then they get on a bus and they're going to spend, because the bus routes are being consolidated, now they're going to spend 30, 40 minutes on a bus. Yep. So the whole first part of their morning, they've done nothing but sit. They get to school. The first thing they do is sit down in the classroom and are expected to essentially drink out of a fire hose with the amount of information that's being thrown at them. Right? So, and then they go through their day. They have slight transitions from here or there because they're walking from class to class. And then they may have gym class. But one of the most frustrating things, we can get to this later, that I'm seeing in gym class today is it has nothing to do with activity and fitness and movement. It has to do with sports, or even less than that. My child came home the other day and said they were doing cup stacking in gym class. I'm like, cup stacking? What does that possibly have to do with working your body? But then after the school day is over, they get back on that bus. They're going to spend 30 to 40 minutes on a bus. And then they go home and the first thing they do is jump back on a screen. They do that until dinner time. Then after dinner, mom, dad, grandpa, whoever it is like, you got to get your homework done. So they sit to do their homework. Then they get those last few precious minutes of screen time before they go to bed. And their day restarts the next day. So their activity levels are dropping significantly. And it amazes me how we literally have a way to hack our brain into learning more, learning faster, learning better, and retaining more information. In fact, studies have actually been done on high school kids that if they take a 1 hour swim class just prior to doing the SAT, they can increase by, the average increase is 40 points just by taking a swim class, nothing else to do, and immediately prior to taking the SAT. Because, I mean, I sort of remember taking the SAT. I rolled out of bed, got to the place. I probably had a cup of coffee in my hand. I was half asleep. I didn't want to be there, yet I'm supposed to take this test that has this drastic impact, on my life. So I was amazed, and I was so excited about, okay, if we can learn how to instigate these neurochemicals and neurofactors in our brain, we can learn easier and better. And as we began to do that with all of our kids, not just one, I was still incredibly frustrated with the public school system. And I remember one day complaining to my wife, and I was just like, I can't believe this is going on. This is going on in school. And it was just one of those days she didn't want to hear me vent. So she said to me, you know what? She goes, you can either keep complaining in these four walls of this house, or you can go run for a school board and try to make a difference with it. And there happened to be an unexpired term or an open seat at the school board at the time. I'd never done anything with politics. I disdain it. So I really wanted nothing to do with it. But if it meant maybe making a change in how kids are educated and being able to affect them in a positive way, I said, all right, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And wound up getting on the board, spent 3/4 of a decade on a board of education, a lot of that time as a president of a board, and became obsessed with the world of STEM. STEM education, yes, it's about science, technology, engineering, and math. It's about coding, it's 3D printing, it's robotics, it's hydroponics, it's drones, it's all these things of the future. But it's not just learning those skills, it's the ability to take problem solving into learning about things, into learning to do things. I just love the world of STEM. I met two people that just had a huge impact on me. One was we wound up actually changing schools that my kids were in. And the superintendent of the new school, his name is John Natolo. He was probably the most unbelievable thought leader I've ever met in my life. Still is to this day. And he just blew me away with his approach to teaching, his approach to learning. He hired a STEM coach who was a very young, energetic teacher who I would watch the way he would run his classes. And the best way to describe it was organized chaos. He was literally designing organized chaos, but the kids were learning. And I remember my kids coming home one day and saying, so we have this new project in STEM today. And I was like, what are you learning? And he's like, well, it turns out that the clips that are used in Africa to hold the mosquito nets inside of their homes are faulty. Like when you push them into the walls, because a lot of the walls in a lot of the homes there, they're made of mud or something to that extent. You push them in, they wind up crumbling. And my fourth grader was coming home trying to 3D design a new clip that they could then send to the Malaria Foundation to try to help, people hold these mosquito nets. And I'm like, how is this happening? Like here in fourth grade, I'm in, rural New Jersey, and you're working on this. Like this is where STEM could go. And they were so obsessed with that process of thinking about how do they solve this problem. So one day the superintendent, John, and this STEM coach and I, we became good friends. We were sitting around my island in full transparency, beers in hand. And we were just talking about, the superintendent was talking about how education has become about standardized tests. It's not about learning, it's about standardized tests. And the STEM coach is talking about the world of STEM and how all industries in the future are going to have their fingers in some way or another in the world of STEM. And I'm there talking about the neurological impact that exercise has on the brain and how we can enhance the way kids learn. And literally, we paused for a minute in the conversation, and I said, imagine if you had all of these things that we're talking about right now and you put it together. I said, I'd call it mind body. And it just kind of popped out. And it was like I made a declaration to the world. Like, this has to happen. This is what I'd call it. And about 3 days later, I remember texting with them, and I was like, it's not mind body, it's MindFit. And this was back in 2014, 2015. And I, talked about it nonstop, how my wife, hasn't killed me yet. Because it was just like one day when I start MindFit, one day when I start MindFit. And I remember one day I came home, and, the healthcare world is an interesting world. And although everyone calls it healthcare, it's really sick care. It's really not healthcare. And I came home from a, rough day at work, got into bed. It was really late at night. It's about 10 o'clock. And my wife was already in bed, and she kind of rolled over half asleep, and she's like, how was your day? And I just said, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm tired of this. And she said, okay. Oh, and she kind of fell half back to sleep. And I said, I think it's time. And she goes, okay. I said, do you even know what I'm talking about? And she goes, yeah, I do.
Okay.
And I said, do you think I'm crazy? And her response was by far the most amazing response that anyone who was at that juncture in their life could ever get. And her response was, I'm just surprised it took you this long. So I was like, okay, I'm taking that as a yes, and I'm going to move forward with this. So I began the process of designing this program where you had one building where kids would specifically do up to 20 minutes of high intensity exercise, and then transition into another room where we would work to inspire them through videos or something like that for about 5 to 7 minutes. And then boom, they'd go into one of the most advanced STEM labs that were in New Jersey. And it would be kindergarten through really 8th, 9th grade that we'd be working on this on. And it happened. And I wound up leaving. I walked away from healthcare at the time. Left my job, which was a crazy thing to do. I was 40 some years old. And I was like, people were like, you're crazy. Like, you can't just walk away from your career. You built this entire career and you're going to walk away. And I said, but this is what I feel like it needs to happen. And wound up opening MindFit in December of 2017, and had the opportunity to work with over 1,000 kids over the course of the time it was open. And then in 2020, COVID killed it. So shut everything down. And it turned into, I guess you can say, a colossal failure at that point, right? Because it just couldn't continue. And was really at a juncture where I had to say, so what happens now? Am I going to walk away from this and just say, well, I tried? Or am I going to try to figure out how to keep it alive? And there was a specific day during my time at MindFit that probably was one of the most impactful of any. And, a lot of times we would do a trial class with parents, with kids first. So people would sign up for a trial class. And so many times right before the class started, a mom, a dad, whoever it is, would kind of pull me aside and say, Coach Mike, I just want to let you know my son or my daughter has ADD or ADHD or is on the autism spectrum. We've tried to get them involved with everything. We've tried soccer, we've tried karate, we've tried chess, we've tried all these different things. Nothing works. I'm just at my wit's end. Is it okay that they take this trial class? I'm like, of course, absolutely. And I was like, and not only is it okay, but I want you to follow us throughout the class. When we're on the fitness side, I want you to watch what we're doing. When we go in and watch inspirational videos, I want you to watch it with us. When we go on the coding side or whatever we were doing that day, watch us, be engaged. It's okay. So we had a little boy come in. He was about 5 years old. He was a little younger than our normal age. She had that same conversation with me, and he did the fitness side, did amazing. He was a little rambunctious in the beginning, but he did an amazing job. Went through, we watched the video, and I don't remember what the video was that day, but then we go in, and I had him 3D designing today for 3D printing. And I remember the mom watching us very closely in the beginning because parents were always very concerned that, their kids are doing Concept 2 rowing machines. They're using like kettlebells, and, it's a little nervous for a family when you're not used to doing that. But I was right alongside his desk and I was helping him with something. And I heard this noise out of the corner of my perception. And I didn't know what it was. I look over and the mom is there and she's weeping. Like, she just has tears rolling down her face. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? So I walk over, I said, are you okay? She goes, how did you get him to sit? And I didn't understand the importance of that question. And she goes, he has ADHD. She goes, he can't read and you have him 3D designing, but you got him to sit. I can't get him to sit to do anything. And he's been sitting for almost 40 minutes. And I said, yes, because when you work the body, it primes the mind for learning. And that was one of the most impactful. And I had that happen in one sense of the way or another, so many different times. And when it came down to, okay, the building is now closed, COVID shut everything down, what happens next? I said, it worked. And it worked so well. It would be irresponsible to not share it with the world. So I started writing a book. And, I actually remember very well the first day I sat down to write. And from, I don't know if you know Dean Graziosi, but I totally stole his idea for how to start writing a book. And I listed out the 10 things that I most like to talk about MindFit. And those 10 things became my 10 chapters. And I sat down at the computer. I'm an Apple junkie, so I have my Apple up on the screen. I'm using Pages, and I'm just watching this cursor blink again and again and again. And I'm like, I can't get anything out. Like, I have all this stuff in here. I can't get it out. So the funny thing about my book is I didn't sit and write and type my book. I spoke my entire book. So I would go on miles upon miles walks. I use a dictation app on my phone and just talk through everything that I needed to get out about the book. And then I would go back, download it, start editing, do it that way. And I wrote the entire book that way. The first version I had of the book was about 35,000 words. And I hired an editor to kind of help me through the process. She looked at it. And the first thing she did was took about almost 20,000 words out of it. She's like, yeah, you got to rewrite all of this. I'm like, no, I'm like, don't do that. But I did. And in the end, we wound up with about a 55,000 word book. It was like 251 pages. I was hoping it had about 150. It was 100 more than what I had imagined. And I finished it in February of last year. And it took me half a year, 3/4 of a year to actually publish it, because all of a sudden I got cold feet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I shared the stories, a lot of what, even the stories I shared today, I shared them in the book. It's very personal. It's about my family. It's about my boys. And, when you, as you put yourself out there every day, and, the messages that you're trying to get out, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I get ripped apart? So I just kind of shelved it. I had the first copy in my hand, and then I just did nothing. And finally I was like, you know what, again, you're being irresponsible. Like, you need to get this out. So, the book was published, and now the goal is, what's next? Like, where do we want to go with MindFit? And there's a couple different directions that we're kind of going. And one is, and parents today, there's we can't expect school systems, governments, or anything to be able to provide for us or to support us in the way that we need. And I'm not knocking governments or school districts or anything like that, but at some point we have to take it into our own hands. So my goal is to eventually license the MindFit method into school districts across the country. But at the same time, I want households themselves to take the responsibility. When it came to the exercise that can be used for MindFit, it's not like you're exercising for weight loss, or you're exercising to improve your cardiac function. This is, you're exercising for a very specific purpose. It's to enhance your neurological function. So when you uncomplicate fitness, because fitness has become the most complicated industry ever, right? It started in the 80s with the big box gyms. And we used to have these gyms that were dungeons in, warehouses. And then all of a sudden we had, Arnold Schwarzenegger said it best, these palaces of chrome, where you walk in, there's 10,000 pieces of equipment. No one knows what to do. Everyone, for whatever reason, jumps on the adductor machine and starts working their adductors because they think it's going to trim their hips, whatever it is. And we've complicated it so much because we're always thinking about what's perfect when it comes to an exercise program, what's perfect when it comes to nutrition. Yet we continue in our search for what's perfect and do nothing at the same time. We continue to do the bad habits that we do before. So for MindFit, I wanted to make it as simple as possible. What was I call MEL, or minimum effective load, that you have to do in order to have the impact on the brain? And wound it down to about an 8 to 14 minute workout. You don't need equipment. You can do it yourself. You can do body weight. movements. If you have equipment, even better, it gives you more variety. But you're essentially doing functional movements. So pushing, pulling, climbing, squatting, standing, all the things that our bodies were normally meant to do. And then I combine some type of a short burst of cardiovascular activity with it. So for example, a simple MindFit workout for 8 minutes could be 5 burpees and 10 ab mats and 15 air squats paired with 30 seconds of mountain climbers, or a minute of mountain, something to that extent, where you're just mixing up functional with more of metabolic at that point. And it had a huge, it was so easy to implement. I've actually had it down now. My next goal is to see, can I go even lower? Can I do 300 seconds of fitness and still have the same impact? Could you do 90 seconds of fitness in a classroom, right? Where you have a teacher, you got a class full of students. Could you actually pull that off? So that's kind of where it's going next. And to just spread the word. Again, activity levels in kids are so low today. Unless you play a sport, so many kids are not active. So you're going to have the health benefits that are associated with, just the exercise in general. But today we need a competitive edge. And I know I talked about standardized tests before. Standardized tests are a great example. Standardized tests are just to make you standardized, right? They're just to make you the same as everybody else. They're not to make you innovative or creative or better learning or showcase your skills. They're just to show that you can memorize a topic or a process and regurgitate it on a piece of paper. The problem with that is that, 50 years ago, we were a manufacturing economy in the United States. We're not today. We're an innovation economy. We're a service economy. So to continue to run an education system as though we are a manufacturing economy, like China, for example, we're always comparing our test scores to China's test scores. But China is a manufacturing economy. We are an innovation economy. So it doesn't really make any sense to do that. We need kids to be able to be innovative, be creative, use things like the design thinking process, which is an unbelievable way to try to attack problems. But then how do you prime your brain to do it? How do you prepare your brain to take you further in either your skills, in how you're learning, how fast you can learn something? And I know I just talked a whole lot, but that's kind of where MindFit came from. And it started with my family, and I don't know where it's going to end. We'll see.
Wow. I did not want to interrupt. It was just going well. The flow was right. I think you answered many questions that I would have asked. But really, I can see the passion, and I get it, man. First of all, I want to commend you and give you all the, the prompts and the kudos and everything for doing what you've done, and for believing in this. And as a parent to a parent, as a father to a father, I can tell you the event that you experienced with your boy at the time, and you, it's not easy, and I cannot possibly imagine what that is. I've had similar stuff, but not to that extent. And it is always difficult, when you're faced with such a reality that you have to deal with, and it's not like you can't cancel it. It's part of life now. You have to figure out a way around it, and you did that. And I also want to commend your wife and as your true partner and her support in this whole thing from day one, and being your catalyst. She's been first of all, she's there, but at your own pace, which is even better, because she's not nagging. She's like, you know what you need to do, but she's not pushing it until you're ready for it. And that's another thing. Understanding that support, is very important. And really learning what happened at that time and what you can do about it, understanding what was the problem and figuring out a way to do it. And then taking it to the next level, because you took really the helm. You took it in your hands. I mean, it's not like you allowed other people to make that decision for you. Let's get involved. And that's the other part. We're not getting involved sometimes. We just expect everybody else to do it for us. But, and again, that's leadership. That's taking action. Action speaks louder than words. I mean, we can talk all we want. We talked about it earlier, you and I. We can read all the books in the world, but we just be, and even if we write it down, it's just a copy. But practicing stuff that we read and really put in real work is a challenge. But you did that. You actually went to the board, you became part of it, you started introducing the concept, and you introduced a concept that is, that you were told by a doctor, which, by the way, does make sense. I mean, if your body is oxygenated well, if the body's metabolism, is kicking, all the stuff, your brain is just functioning better. I mean, just, physics, work 101, and biology. But it does work. And that, to your point, our society, and I think now more than ever, is needed. The work that you do is needed, because you're right. Our kids, I see it with my kids. Listen, you and I, we've grown, playing outdoors. I used a skateboard, I did martial arts, I played soccer, I did all that stuff. We hiked, we went on all the different things, swimming, so I've done it all, right? But it was outdoors. We spent very little time at home. I mean, literally, other than doing homework and stuff, you come in and sleep. But you're like, every break you're out. You're working something, you're running, you're sweating, our kids don't do that. You described it exactly that. You were talking about the kids, day. That's my kids' day. They wake up 6 o'clock. They don't even barely get breakfast. They're already connected with their chats and whatever. And then they're in the bus with their friends for a half hour. Exactly. And it's funny. My kids we live literally by the high school. Uh-huh. And so they still take the bus so they can do the whole tour with their friends. And so we're the first station or stop. They go all the way around for a half hour to get back to the same school, which is not, literally, if I can open up the gate, they can go into the room. But that's the weirdest. But that's really what they do. And then they come back and to you, exactly what they do. They come back, they grab whatever they can buy, and then they just go into their dungeons again, close doors, and that's it. And you can't even do anything about it. So it is a monotonous routine, and it is really taking away a toll on their body. I mean, my younger son had, for a couple of years, he was just, especially after COVID, he gained so much weight because he was not doing anything. And eventually he got into basketball and stuff, and now he's trimmed nicely and he's doing good. But it took a whole event for him to actually, and then cholesterol was high, and the doctor says you got to do something about it. But the behavior that we have today, it's and that's the other thing, because you're not oxygenated enough, your body is not doing exercise. To your point, I mean, we have it. I mean, I feel it myself. I go to the gym in the morning before you go to work, and you go to work, you're like, the day is exciting. Your metabolism kicking, you're like in the best, form, like you're running like 200 miles an hour. Yep. And when you don't do that, you're like, you walk up, you go to the office, and you're like, oh, okay, this. and that's for adults, but kids is the same way. And actually, that's where you're building your knowledge, you're building skills. And so that was the just some of the at least the comments I wanted to make. But really, you took the steps, you build the thing, you started showing it, and it's working, and you've helped a lot of people over the years. Because the example of the child that had the autism and the reaction of the mom, I'm pretty sure that's just one of many that you've experienced. But people are not seeing it because the approach is different. You got him to do something. He got excited, and he was not thinking the same way he was thinking normally. He had a different process now, and it impacted him, and it changed his life. And I'm assuming he's doing much better now, and his parents are happier. And by the way, and I love what you did up to you said it. The pandemic hit on everybody, especially the fitness world got hurt big time. If you have a fitness brand, whatever, that was probably the one thing that closed early and opened the latest or reopened rather the latest. It just there's like, there was no need for this stuff, although that is the most important. In the immune system is healthier when it's active, right? But unfortunately, we're not going politics, but that didn't play right.
No, not at all.
But what I love about what you did also, Mike, is that you took that knowledge. That's the other thing. Like we do a lot of things, and sometimes it's like documentation of the stuff, right? And we talked about this knowledge to be shared, and knowledge without putting it somewhere where people can have access to it and real steps to utilize it. That's going to be nothing. So you took the time to write a book. But I also love the way that you're very unorthodox and not conventional at all with your approach. That's actually me. I can tell you this: if I'm gonna write a book, it's probably gonna be the same thing. I'm gonna do like an audio, speech to text, whatever, and then that's it. I don't know. I'm not a typist, and it's gonna be a hard thing to put it, in play. But if I read it to myself, or at least just state the whole thing in a format, and then I guess consolidate in a written format, that would work for me. But it did work for you, and I'm pretty sure that's probably with the new technology now you can do that. I mean, it's basically the same thing as typing. You just read into type. the concept is awesome, and then you put it all in there. And I love about the 10 chapters, the 10 things that you wanted to share, and then you put the book. So you didn't waste the time. Although the pandemic did put a halt on everything, you took the time to see. That's the thing that I've noticed in this pandemic. As tragic as it was, as bad as it was for a lot of areas, many people took that time to reestablish themselves and figure out a way out of it. And that's it's really something to admire in a lot of these folks, because some people just fold and they just, this is it, the doomsday watch is on. Or you can just say, okay, what can I do to maximize the opportunity, not waste any time? And frankly, it went by so quick eventually. I mean, yeah, now we can say quick. At the time, it was not quick. but it's fine. It's just like a relativity time. Like, why I always say, if you're having a happy moment, it lasts minutes. If you're having a sad moment, it lasts forever. But then when it's over, it's like, oh, it's like it never happened, right? It's just a memory.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how that plays. But you took that time to turn into something positive. Again, commending your wife again. What took you so long, dude? But you know what? Sometimes that's a very good question for people, audiences. Like, whatever you want to do, sometimes there is a timing for everything, and everything happens in the due time. It never happens before, and that means you're not ready. I can just relate to it from my podcast or network. Is that I've thought about this for years, but I didn't apply it until it was the right time and the right mix. And believe it or not, the pandemic helped too, in my case. Yeah. Because I had the time to do it. So it's just amazing, but there's a time for everything. So if you have an idea, a goal, whatever you want to achieve, work towards it. And there's going to be a point of no return. That's the trigger, boom. And then you just launch. I mean, the shuttle, there's so much preparation before it goes up. And then after the countdown, it's just like, there's a point where a booster, and then you're like, we have liftoff, and that's it. Once that lift is up, now it's just, going to your target. And you did that. So again, I mean, I'm just kind of almost summarizing what you've covered. And you've talked for 37 minutes or 35 minutes about this whole thing. And you know what? There was no reason for me to interrupt it, because I believe that you've covered a lot of angles there. And I don't think any question that would have asked, would have been, missing any of the stuff you covered. But really, for audiences, the work you've done, the work you're doing. And I know something you didn't say, that you also do your podcast now. And so you took it also on the road. I mean, that's the other thing. Podcast is just I refer to them as lectures, mini lectures. People are talking and they share in, wealth of information and insights and valuable, knowledge. But it's more on an audio visual type of effect as opposed to reading. Some people may not have the time to actually read the book, but maybe they can listen to a discussion about the book. I actually, we had a training one time. I don't know. I use this book. It's called The Oz Principle. It's about accountability in sales and stuff. And there's an audio version. There's some training about it, but we used it as an advantage, and we used the discussion part about it, and it helps. So some people have different ways of applying things, but it just changes the dynamics. And so you've done also that, and I think you've done enough of that so far. And you're just starting, and you're focused on that. So now, like my question, really, now you have the book, it's out there. And have you restarted the actual program at the school district?
So I have not reopened a facility. Okay. I'm beginning now to talk with school districts about implementing the MindFit method in schools. But again, I think at some point we're going to have to take responsibilities as households to be able to do this. And something that I really haven't shared with a lot of people, but book 2 is now actually in the works.
Nice.
So after people read the first one, and the funny thing is although the book is utilizing fitness to enhance neurological function in the world of STEM, take the word STEM out of it. It enhances neurological function for learning. And while the book was written on how you can implement it for children, it works just as well with adults. There's no difference. So as people began reading the book and as people began listening to the podcast, everyone said, you really need to write a book for adults as to what can we do? And I'll laugh and I'll say, well, you just need to do the exact same thing that's in here. You just don't do it for STEM. You do it for your job. You do it for your business. You do it for your side, whatever it is. And what I've learned is that people like a step-by-step process. What can they do? How can they implement it? So the new book is a little bit different, and parts of it I'm going to be able to dictate, but this book requires a lot more research of how do you literally grab the bull by the horns and drive yourself to success with the basis of the MindFit method, enhancing or being a catalyst for your growth. There has been books that have been so influential to me throughout the years, whether they're business books or self-help books, that this is where it's going to go next, because we can't teach our kids to do the things, even for the process of the MindFit method, if we're not doing them ourselves. We are the biggest role model for our kids, and although TikTok and Instagram and everything else seems to be running the world these days, they still see what we do. And, you mentioned before how your son gained a lot of weight during COVID. Well, so did I. And during COVID, I gained 25 pounds, which my weight fluctuates 2, 3, 4 pounds all the time, but I'm always in the same world. And it was the stress of closing the business. It was COVID. It was everything. I let myself go. And here I am writing this book about everything that needs to happen, and I was falling apart. And what happened was, like most people, they have a favorite pair of jeans. So I hadn't worn them in a while, and I went to grab my favorite pair of jeans. I went to put them on, and I'm like, what happened? So I hadn't stepped on a scale in a long time. I jumped on a scale, and I was in shock. I couldn't believe that I had gained 25 pounds. So I remember walking downstairs. My wife and all 3 of my boys were right around the kitchen island. And again, I came down. I'm like, all right, I've gained a ton of weight. That's it. I got to get myself back on track. And instead of everyone kind of chuckling or being like, oh, good, the looks on their faces was pure relief. And I remember my wife saying to me later, Mike, we just didn't want to say anything. So right at that point, literally that day, I was like, exactly what you have to do, right? Especially growing up in a fitness world and training people throughout the years, you know exactly what you have to do. But there's a world of difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it. And I just put back in place everything that needed to happen to make it happen, to make it work. And in a very short amount of time, increased my muscle, lost 25 pounds of body fat. It was great. But it also had an effect that I never anticipated. And it was the effect on my kids, because my kids were fairly sedentary at that point too, because of, again, you're a COVID. And my youngest, who at the time was probably like 12, I was a cross country runner. I was a very good cross country runner in high school. And I was 12 years old, or he's 12 years old. I'm like, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to go run a mile. I'll be back. So I live in a cul-de-sac. There's 11 houses on our street. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just run 800 meters. Maybe I'll run 400 meters. We'll see. I didn't make it to my neighbor's mailbox. And that is the honest truth. I felt like I was going to die. And something I haven't said here today, but when I was 22 years old, I had my hip replaced. I broke the ball right off my femur my senior year of high school, had a pin and 4 screws put in, and after 5 years developed avascular necrosis and needed a hip replacement at the age of 22. So I had all this extra weight. People don't realize it, but on your hip joints, for every 10 pounds of weight that you add to your body, you add 50 pounds of torque to that hip joint. And I couldn't run. I couldn't get to my neighbor's mailbox. It was embarrassing. So I wound up walking 800 meters that day. And then the next day I walked a mile. And then I would run to one mailbox and then walk to the next and run to one mailbox, just building myself
gradually.
up.
Yeah.
And what I watched was my kids started doing the same thing. And because they saw what I was doing and they're like, okay, this is working for dad. Dad's feeling better. He's, I want to do this too. And my youngest embraced it to the point where we would go on 2-mile runs and I'd be looking behind me the entire time because I'm so scared. Where is he? And after 3 months, he was somewhere in front of me. I couldn't even find him anymore because he was so much faster than I was. But he was the same thing. He couldn't run 400 meters in the beginning. My middle son, who was actually who the MindFit Method, the whole story is really about. After a good amount of time of running, and I did CrossFit for years. I was a CrossFit coach as well. We started this thing where my youngest and I would do Murph every weekend. So Murph is 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and a mile run at the beginning and a mile run at the end. We started doing that every weekend. My middle son, who was not interested in training at all, comes out one day and says, "Can I join you guys?" Absolutely, but you haven't done this, so it's going to hurt. it's going to be tough. And he completed about 3/4 of it. And he was miserable the next day because he was so sore. Oh. But guess what happened the next weekend? Can I join you guys again? Can I join you guys again? All three of my boys now are a cross-country runner. I have a 14, a 16, and an 18-year-old. My oldest is a freshman in college, and they're all runners. Their lives now are built around fitness. And it is not because of any encouragement of me at this point. In fact, I'm often the one saying, you need to take a break. Like, you need to take a day off. You've trained too many days in a row. You have to stop. That is their doing. And as a parent, that is one of my biggest successes that I've had. But it wasn't me telling them what to do. It was me doing it and them following it. So that's where book 2 is going to go. And it's going to be more on the business side too. And how do you reach your goals? How do you, how do you be productive? How do you overcome your fears? But if we don't do it as the adults, the kids aren't going to do it either. And we're rapidly turning into the world. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie WALL-E, the Disney movie, yeah. But everyone in the world was sitting in a chair that used to ride around by itself. No one even stood up. That's where we're going. So if we're going to put a stop to that, we have to take the responsibility as the adults and jump in and do that.
You're talking about leading by example, one-on-one. Yeah. And as a parent, that's the first where it starts. And I think that's a concept that's applicable everywhere and anywhere. Totally. As a matter of fact, I don't care what work you do. I mean, whatever you do, if you have somebody that works with you, if you do things, people are going to follow. And that's just how it is. But, if you're not doing, the first excuse they're going to say, like, well, you're not doing it. Why are you telling us to do it? Right. And especially with kids, that's the first reaction they're going to say today is like, Dad, look at you. I've had that expression before. So I can tell you from real personal experience, they come up at you with those. But you're right. I mean, and by the way, thank you for sharing that, because there's no shame in the game. I mean, we all have sometimes times where we kind of collapse a little bit. And, it's not, people think when you're doing something like, oh, they don't see those difficulties and the difficult times you go through and the hurdles and the times where you really feel like bad and you're just, oh my God. But the thing is, that's going to happen to everyone. The best of us will go through those, but how you deal with it and whether you come back from it or not, and the ability to accept sometimes, like, okay, well, it's a restart, but I have to restart. And it starts with that first step. As a matter of fact, I just posted something today about that first step. Everything starts with that first step. It's you're like, well, I love that. I want to buy that stuff, but if I'm not making that step, it's not going to happen. But you know what? You have to know that it's going to take some time to get back to your conditioning or whatever that speed that you were at before. And again, the pandemic did have a strike on almost all of us. Some people actually, you mentioned Jersey. I mean, we're lucky in some of the states where we have the ability to actually go around. Even in the pandemic, we're not as excluded or like locked down. I mean, some states, they didn't have that on some location, like in New York City, people were locked in apartments. They couldn't even go out. That's a very, very much difficult situation than some of the other folks that are in suburban areas and they can actually do things and walk around and, outdoors. So there was no restriction that way. So it changed the dynamics. But even with that, to your point, I think we all gained some weight during that time. Well, maybe I won't speak for everybody, but I can relate to that personally. I had that. I have some videos, that I did, some TikToks and stuff during that time, and I can notice the difference in the weight. But I love what you said about your favorite pair of jeans, because I have a rule. I do not change, my size in the wardrobe, no matter what. As soon as the things start getting tight, that's my cue. Get out and get some work. This is not I am not doing this. I mean, By the way, I changed my order. I buy stuff, but that's the same size.
Right.
The idea is that you cannot, because I know people that have like a couple of sizes, like one up, one down. And I have friends that did that where they have 1, 2 sizes, off. So they have, a wiggle. I have no rule of that. The only rule is one size, and that's exactly what's going to remain, or better. I'd rather be loose in my things than actually tighten them. So, but that's how again, these are little tactics or techniques that you can use to kind of almost motivate you in a way, or remind you. We need those triggers. And you're right. Like, and by the way, I thank you for sharing about, I know that's personal about the hip and stuff, but the weight gain, it doesn't have to have, even though without surgery, your knees are the first place you're going to feel the weight. This happened to me years back. I took a year of, whatever laps, if you want to call it, and I gained 45 pounds, not 25 pounds, 45 pounds. There was a point where I could not climb steps. I mean, the stairs were like hard. I mean, literally going upstairs were like, I have to actually crawl up. And the pain was just, very bad. And that's the other thing. Depends on your size, depends on a lot of things. All that weight is actually being supported by those 2 pillars that you actually call legs. And if the weight is too much, they're going to collapse eventually, and you're not going to have it. Then your cardio is bad, everything. But I love the idea of your new book, because you're right. You've focused on the children, and that helps, and you still have that. But now you took it to the next level. So yeah, I mean, you're really, it's amazing that you're getting to the next level and you're doing this next step. And I think, it's awesome. I love the work that you do. I mean, I follow, like, as I said, your stuff. Do you have a release date, by the way, on the new book, or an estimated?
Not yet. Still writing. And, I know when I wrote the first one, I remember after I hired the editor, that is a lesson in humility. Because when you've put your blood, sweat, and tears in something, and then you spend money and you hire someone to then look at your work, I think my first reaction was they're just going to look at this and be like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And she's like, "Okay, yeah, this is good. We got a lot of work to do." I was like, "Whoa, what?" So I know it's going to be a process of, how do we get this message out correctly? And the goal is not to get the book out as fast as possible. The book is the purpose at this point is to write a book that people can actually use as a tool. And I always try to use myself as an example of things that I have found worked, or hacks, or whatever. Everyone loves the word hack today. Like, how do we biohack this, or how do we do that? But there are certain things that we can do that truly do have an impact and are able to get us from point A to point B a little faster. And usually doesn't supplement the work that you need to put in. And again, we kind of talked about it in the beginning, but that's the part where I say it all the time: consistency is king. If you are someone that really does nothing, right? You don't do any exercise, you don't eat properly, you drink really high caffeinated and high sugar drinks. Anything you do at that point and that moves you in the right direction is a positive thing to do, even if it's only this big. But you just got to stick with it consistently. And we, especially as adults, it's kids too, but we as adults, we are obsessed with shiny objects, right? When we start a new diet plan, or I hate that word, but we start a new nutrition plan, or we start a new workout, and then we hear about our friend who started something else. We're like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this one. Maybe I should be doing that one." Stop. Do what you're doing. And when you get to a point where you're not progressing anymore, then you can make a pivot. But if you've only been doing it for a month or two, you're nowhere near that point. Like, keep pushing. And honestly, even so I'm only, I'm less than even an amateur when it comes to podcasting, because I've only got 17 episodes in. But, my goal is to actually be able to rock these pretty well when I hit about episode 100. Because I know, you got to keep working at it. You just got to keep doing what you do until you get more comfortable, and you get to the point where, in a podcast situation, you find your voice. But when it comes to fitness, or it comes to anything, you got to stick with it. There's people generally fall into one of 3 types of categories. They're either the architect, the builder, or they're the groundskeeper. So the architect loves to plan everything out. That's the person who, they love buying the new workout clothes. They love finding out the new fitness program is going to be. They buy all the stuff to make sure they're ready to go for their new program. That's the architect. The builder just jumps right in. They do no planning whatsoever. They just jump in and they're just blindly going to start building and go. Those people are great, but after they make their initial progress, their initial success, they tend to fall back off because they don't want to be the groundskeeper, right? They want to build the building, but then they don't want to take care of it after it's built. We have to incorporate ourselves to be all three. We're going to be really good at one. And the other ones are where we're going to have to find those hacks or find those productivity things that we can do to get ourselves through those things. Tim Ferriss said it best. As adults, we are, fairly good at one thing and at best mediocre at everything else. And that's just how we are generally as people. So in that situation, whether it's your business, whether it's your job, whether it's your family life, which one are you? Are you the architect? Are you the builder? Or are you the groundskeeper? And whichever one you are, continue to hone those skills. That's great, but you're going to have to work on the other ones just a little bit. And you're going to have to find the ways and the tools to be able to progress you a little bit better.
Well, Mike, thank you for that, because that is a powerful advice. And you know what? It's funny because I'm one of the belief that I don't have to be excellent at everything, but I need to know a little bit of everything. But I do need to be good at least something of everything, because it sounds weird. It's almost like philosophical here, but the idea is that, I know what I'm good at, but I need to train myself on other areas. So this way I can manage things, but I cannot be an expert in everything. Sometimes you have to seek the help, and exactly. but you need to know what the other pieces are, because you still need to apply them. And that's one way. But I love what you said about consistency and about just, never stop. You start, you got to keep going, and you take it one day at a time, one problem at a time, and you move on step by step. And again, we talked about the first step. The journey begins and it only ends if you stop it. I mean, it continues. And to your point, you can always get to a point where you have to shift. And to your point, the word pivot you use. So you can pivot to something else, but you'll never go back and never stop. You just keep going. And one leads to the other, to lead to the other. And you're going to find yourself in much better situation. You said something about your podcast. And I have to say, in my word, I think you're doing terrific. You're a pro already. So don't, you got this. But you're right. It's like everything else, right? You become, it's like having an education, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and that's what it happens. Eventually you become, it's a natural piece of it. And you just do this by default. But it doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not an expert either, but I remember my first podcast, when our first show, I was like nervous. You have a little doubt, you'd saying it, you're always worried about how people are going to think about it. Is it going to be appealing? But the one thing I did is I didn't care about what people would think about it. I thought what I was, focused on is the message. I wanted to, the message is the key. And as long as it's a good message, someone is going to find the value in it. And that was it. So how I presented it maybe not be the best way. And you know what? I eventually learned. I mean, my background is I was a tour guide. I'm in sales. So I presented thousands of times in my life. So it helps a little bit, but still it's not the same, because that's the other thing. You have the perception. You always have to worry. And sometimes you don't have to worry all the time how people are going to see you. People are going to judge you no matter what.
Exactly.
Fact, people are going to judge you. Some people are going to like you. Some people may not like you. The question, the idea is that you want to have a 99% ratio of like versus not. But that's you work towards that. But the idea, there's always going to be someone like, well, look at him, look at her. What the hell? He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's all good. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. The question is, what am I doing? Am I making a difference? That's all that matters. Yep. I believe I'm doing it. I believe in my mission. You believe in your mission. And that's really what's important to all people. If you're out there listening, watching right now, you don't have to take it from us, but you have your own vision. You have your own goals. You have your own dreams. Don't let anybody tell you that, you can't, or you're not good at it. You're never going to be as good, or compare you to other people. If they're superstars, they're superstars. That's okay. They started somewhere too. Always remember that there's no one that we look at, up to or idolize or take as role models that started at that peak. They had to start somewhere. And I guarantee you at the time when they were starting, They were looking for opportunity. They were seeking help. They were trying. They had doubts. They have everything that you and I right now feeling, in the beginning of anything we do. So I understand that is not, unique for, like, they're not so special. They just work towards that being special. You are just as equally special, with them, and you can do it. So don't think that, it's going to affect you. Like, oh my God, just believe. I think that's the first thing. If you don't believe in yourself, that's a problem. You got to believe, and you can be, let's say, whatever it is that you want to do. It could be as dumb as it could be. It doesn't matter. It's not what as long as you believe in it, do it. And yes, you might start with something off, but then you'll adjust. As you said, we'll adjust over time. You will see the feedback. You'll get that, and you'll improve slowly but surely, and you'll get to a point. Flying was an awful idea. People were killed for, like, even mentioning that we can fly as humans, right?
Right.
The idea of having another continent over the Atlantic Ocean, was almost like, ludicrous, right? So we can talk about space, exploration, and, who would have said I'm talking to someone right now on the screen, and we're having a discussion, I mean, we're watching someone live, from on the other side of the world. All these things were like at a certain point, like, oh my God, you crazy. What are you talking about? This people flying. And that's a big deal. Now people fly, like, for as business. You can actually be here and go to do a meeting in LA and come back, in the same day. So everything is possible. Open your mind to it. Learn, have the ability to believe in yourself, and that's the whole thing. And don't worry about what people think. But you have to believe in that. Now, it is important to know that you're making a difference and what you're delivering has merits. Obviously, you don't just, that. Believe it or not, people are doing stuff that has no value, and they're still getting, appreciated. We talked about TikTok and stuff. When I say no value, it's got a value somewhere. It could be entertaining, whatever, but it may not be educational before, because we think sometimes resource value and education is key, or financial, whatever. But entertainment is fun too. We all love our entertainers, and that's okay. Everybody has a component, a formula, a spin, and that's all good. But the idea, don't compare yourself to anybody. You have something different. Mike, you have MindFit. That's your thing. You're expert at it. I cannot come in and change that. I cannot do half of what you do. I can learn, but I'll still have to learn from you because this is your thing. And that's the key. Every one of us has an opportunity to do this. And again, you're probably listening and watching this show right now, and you're like, well, these are two guys that are talking about podcasts. And so we're talking about real applied things that, Mike has been doing, and he's been, it's plenty of work that's been done, and he's demonstrated good results, and he's going to the next stage and next stage. There's nothing that can stop Mike. I know that for a fact. I just met Mike literally, but I followed Mike, in person. I just met him, but we follow each other, but I can see what he's doing and where he's heading. That's the other thing. Sometimes you have to don't look at here, like near you, look at the future, like try to figure out like what could be the angle. If you can't see the angle, that means you're not opening your mind, wide enough. there's plenty. You have to like open your mind to like see like, what's this? Where's this going? I can see 3 books. I can see 4 books. I can see a movie. I can see a lot of stuff. I can see a concept that is applied in real education system across the nation, even worldwide. This is a podcast that is worldwide. This is a show that's being watched everywhere. Someone may have to pick this idea in Australia. Someone will pick it up in Europe or the Middle East or Asia. We don't know. But there's someone that's going to take value of this. And that's the other thing. If we can make a difference in one life at a time, see, one time, one step, one life, 1 degree, it's all one. 1 minute of, 1 second in life. That's the other thing. One breath at a time is a good difference, right? So that's the idea. So don't feel that you're restricted by any means. And the world today allows us to do a lot more that we could have done 10 years ago, a few years ago. Technology is just making it a lot easier. It could be bad for us. It could be good for us. It's like everything else. I'm not going to go into the debate of what, firearms and stuff, but, or weapons, whatever. Some of them are used for the right reason. Some of them are used for the wrong reason. It all depends on who's doing what. And, we can debate all the merits. Maybe we don't need all that stuff, but, that's not the topic today. But the fact is everything, you take, Mike delivers a book. There's 2 things that can change your life. I deliver a speech. There's 1 thing that can change your life. Maybe not today, maybe another show. It doesn't matter. But that's the thing. You don't discount, what you're getting. Information is coming to you. You filter it up. You take all the stuff. It's like you squeeze the best, nectar of what you get, and then you apply it to your own doing. That's it. Everyone can benefit from everyone. And that's I mean, seriously, everyone can benefit from everyone because that is a fact. If I meet people, it's funny. I was on a trip, and they, we were with some friends, and the daughter of our friend showed me a new trick on how to take a picture on my iPhone, and it was like, it's like, how did I not think about that? But it was not my thing. But I'm like, I just learned something that is as simple as that, but it's actually effective in taking pictures. And that's the thing. One small idea, you don't know where it's coming from and when it's going to happen. But if you're not out there seeking the information, you're not grabbing and you're not absorbing, or if you're like, you're pushing all the information, this is not for me, this is not for me. As we say, we know the expression, never judge a book by its cover. Well, that's a lot of people do this. Like they look at it, they may just catch this part of the show, like, oh, this is boring. No, but it happens. It happens. Like you just stumble on that, maybe a piece of the show that was the least interesting, and you discount, the whole opportunity, but you missed everything that was positive in the show. But that's because that's our nature. We don't like, let me see what this interesting. Let me hear what they have to say. And you're like, oh my God, this was good. What was I missing? Right. And this is just an example, but many things. So again, I wanted just to give you like all the props, dude, for doing your podcast and keeping it up. And it is an evolve, and you're just going to get more and more good at it. And, you're going to have a lot of success. This is, I discovered this by default, by actually mistake, not even, because when I started this whole concept personally was about health and healthcare. You're in healthcare. So, like, I love what you said about sick care, because really that's the thing. It's not preventative health. I mean, although we try to promote that now, it's more about like, we fix you when you're sick, as opposed to we prevent you from getting sick. So those are the things. But I love it. So it started about the idea, and then it evolved slowly but surely into something different, and I started learning. But really, you're gonna joke, you're gonna laugh at me right now, but I didn't even know. I heard podcasts, but I never knew what it was. It sounded funny. It was like podcast, what is that? I actually did not even know about it. I started a radio concept. That's what I wanted, or a show, just like the TV shows. But then I realized, what's the difference between a podcast and a TV talk show? None.
Not today.
It's none. It's really the same thing. So again, we refer to these things differently, but when you look at it, this is a talk show. This is, maybe not on, one of the major networks, but it is nevertheless a talk show. And people are creators today everywhere. Vimeo, YouTube. I mean, they have their own platforms. There are thousands and thousands of real people that are out there sharing value. And you and I, Mike, we talked earlier about something, that the information that you're going to find in podcasts, the information that you're going to find in these talk shows, you're not going to find on regular TV, because that's not the same, message. That's not the same platform. This is raw. This is from people that are real life people that are not stage or anything. Some of them is entertaining. There's Clubhouse, for example, is awesome. You can just go in there and listen to people chatting, and you can jump in on a discussion, and learn from experts from all over the backgrounds. It's amazing. And so again, there's so much work, folks, out there. And, the work that Mike is doing out there is terrific. He's been doing it for a mission. It is a personal mission to him. And I'm your fan, dude. So I'm gonna give you a bump fist, So keep up the great work, dude. So I'm just gonna pump it up for you. And like I said, it's I've learned a lot of things today just from what you've presented, and it's sweet to actually have a discussion where you can pick up a few things at every angle. And that's the other thing. It's like you have like to be a dish. Just absorbing, frequencies from all over. And then you can, filter them out, whatever it is, and distribute them to different channels if you have to. That's how I see it.
Learning. That's the key to it. Neurogenesis, and it ties back into the exercise, but exercise actually causes neurogenesis. So neurogenesis is the creation of new brain cells, new synaptic clefts, in your brain. And when we were kids, I actually remember my mom telling me I was trying to suck the helium out of a balloon to make my voice go funny. I remember her telling me, you're going to burn up all your brain cells and you never get any back. And we've just proven now that that's not true. And every time you learn, you actually create new neurological connections in your brain. And neurogenesis is the creation of new brain cells. So when you put a 95-year-old person on an exercise program, and people are like, whoa, like, what type of CrossFit are they doing? You'd be surprised. It's amazing how much they can do. But again, never stop learning, because you can rebuild and actually not even just rebuild, but build beyond the amount of brain capacity that you had before just by using your brain. And when we sit all day and we're just scrolling all day long, we're not using our brain because you're not implementing what you learn. Take that time and just grab it by the horns, learn something, and then run with it.
Well, Mike, I love what you said, because to your point, the more you learning or you are eager to learn, the more you find yourself willing to learn more and absorbing more. I do work. I told you I'm in the healthcare as well, and I work with the senior market. And dude, I meet people that are in the 80s and even 90s that are like so happy, so alive, so active, very smart, and they're actually really, really, like, they don't even look the age, they don't feel the age. They're just like superstars in my world. I mean, and that's the thing. So that's the other thing. So it is never too late, and you can build and build and build. And the brain, we don't even use a small percent of the capacity of our brain. So we just have to tap into that. It's just a whole different world. And you hear this all the time. We see it in movies, we hear it all the time, but we just, sometimes, again, we talk about the discounting ideas, like, we just kind of dismiss them. Don't dismiss things. It is real, folks. It is.
And you know what? Get feedback from yourself. So start, I tell people to do this all the time. Start a journal, and you have one entry each day. And all your entry is, what did you learn today that you didn't know the day before? And then you can go back and actually see all the things that you've learned over a week, over a month, over a year. And if your page is blank, you're not trying hard enough, right? You got to start putting yourselves into places where people know things that you don't. And that's why, look, certainly not touch on politics, but I see the division in this country today that is just driving, states apart, countries apart, families apart. And what's happened is, because of social media, it's gotten so easy to surround ourselves with people that think exactly like us, right? You join a Facebook group of, I only love purple elephants. And if it's not a purple elephant, I don't like it. So you join a group that's everyone loves purple elephants. So when there's a green elephant, well, all the people in your group are going to discredit that green elephant because there's only purple ones, right? We have to start putting ourselves in situations where people know things about things that we don't know. That's how you learn. And that's how we will also reduce the amount of division that we see today in this world. Some of the most fascinating conversations I have with people are with people who think very differently than I do. And, move away from if they don't think like you, then they hate you. That's not true at all. But don't use the opportunity necessarily to force your beliefs on them. Use the opportunity to learn something from them. And there's been many conversations I've had over the years where someone has a stark opinion against, something that I believe. And my opinion wound up changing, not because they forced theirs on me, but I got to ask different questions. And if you start asking different questions for people that know different things than you do, you'd be amazed where you can go, for anything in life.
I love it, Mike. And it's amazing, because we talked about technology and how this world today is, we're pretty much connected. And you talked about social media. It is a big village, and we have so many cultures within the village, and so many opinions and visions and views and opinions. And you're right. We don't have to be stuck to one, format. We have so many options, and we can get the best of everybody.
Yeah.
I was just having this discussion about, for example, you look at a country such as the AU, like Dubai, right? It's a place that took the best of every part of the world. Mm-hmm. They took the best from the US, from Europe, from the Asian countries, from everywhere, and they made up a country from nowhere. A new. It's almost like when you look at him on, and you see the pictures, the videos that people are posting. It's like, yeah, but it started. It's a desert. It was nothing there. It was just like a sand. But they took the best of everybody. So if they had discounted or just literally disbelieved in what can be, or limited themselves to one type of thought, they wouldn't be where they are today. Yeah. And that's the thing. we can all evolve by learning from each other. And I love that message, Mike. It's powerful. And, I hope that people can take it. I mean, and you're right. It's not about your opinion. Because again, to your point, you can be sheltered in one group and just not open to the other concept. But, that's okay. That's going to limit what your possibilities, your horizons. And that's what we call horizons. It's open. You just take what you can,
Right.
and that's the other thing. Like I always refer to this as 3D or 4D. Don't look at the work 2D. The world is a lot more than we think. I mean, if you fly at 40,000 feet, the world becomes very smaller and stuff, and you can start seeing the value of things. And if you just get off the Earth atmosphere, you'll be like really amazed of how things are. So you need to just open up your mind that there is more, there's different, and absorb. I mean, you got to be a sponge every day. And it's not like, oh, that's the old way. Historically, that's always been the case. That's the only way we know it. That's how my grandparents did it. Okay, well, that's the case. We wouldn't be, if there would be no innovation. There wouldn't be no future because we would have limited ourselves to being on horses still.
One of the favorite things I heard someone say recently was, you have older generations. And I put myself in the older generation now, as much as I may not like to be in that older generation, but I am. But I keep hearing people say to younger generations, well, these people have it so easy. They don't know what we went through. But here's the most ironic thing about that statement. As parents, we say all the time that we want to make things easier for our kids, right? So if we want it to be easier for the next generation, don't then chastise them and say that they don't understand what you had to go through because they had it easier. That's what we're trying to do. Like we're trying to make it easier for each generation, and they're going to experience it in a different way than we are. So I joke with my kids all the time because, you have the old saying, well, I walk to the bus stop every day in a snowstorm in bare feet uphill both ways. And, they kind of laugh at me, but the challenges and the struggles that we had when we were kids didn't even exist. What they have to deal with today did not exist when we have to. When we had a bully in our school that we had to deal with, you only had to deal with them when you were in school or if you saw them, on the basketball court or something like that. Today, they can't get away from them. So today, social media and technology, it's everywhere. So we have to allow them to face their own struggles in the time that they are living right now, because don't expect them to be able to go through it the same way that we did. It's just not going to happen.
Mike, listen, this is powerful stuff, and I think I took a little bit more of your time today. It was so fun. Yeah, we're having a good time, but so I know we have to wrap it up. But so before we kind of part today, I want you to just share with our audiences, maybe one or two pieces of advice that can, maybe alter their, day to day or maybe their future life. I think. You have a lot of mojo there that we can benefit from. So go for it.
I would say, again, always anything you look at or anything you're trying to teach someone else, use yourself as an example. Be that role model. Be that person to be able to show that you were who you were. Maybe you failed. Maybe you took those steps backwards, and then take what you learned and then try to share that with somebody else. One of the coolest things, and I'll preview this for you because I haven't shared it a whole lot with other people, although my last podcast episode was about it. One of the tools that I've used very, very successfully is called triple habit stacking. And triple habit stacking is if you have a goal, and I'll use fitness and health as an example. What happens is people will say, okay, I want to get healthier. I want to either lose weight, or my doctor told me I need to improve my cardiac fitness, whatever it is. So what they do is all right, I'm going to start working out, or I'm going to start working out and eating right, whatever it is. But they're such broad statements, and they get all excited. I'm actually totally against ever starting a new workout plan on a Monday, because your expectation that it's Monday, it's a new start. It's like New Year's Day, right? It's a New Year's resolution every Monday. And what happens is life gets in the way. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. But when we go to start something new, we have these expectations of perfection. So the thing I would say is, and I actually use this myself, when I needed to get out of my own funk, I knew exactly what to do, but I also knew exactly what I would have done 10 years prior. And I was in a physical condition where I couldn't actually do those things. So I had to take a different approach. So if you choose 3 things that you are not doing right now, but you know those 3 things, even individually, will lead you closer to your goal. So for example, if you want to start a healthier lifestyle, you want to start exercising, you want to start eating better, you want to lose weight, choose 3 things. So thing number 1 could be you're going to walk 10,000 steps every day. Thing number 2 is you're just going to agree, you're not going to change your diet at all. You're just going to agree that you're not going to eat after 7 p.m. at night. And thing number 3 is you're not going to drink anything but water. Right? So there are 3 fairly simple things. You don't need equipment for any one of those things. You don't need money to do any of those things. And you lay them all out. So you create a calendar and you put all 3 things in each day. And you know that you are going to fail. It is the triple habit stacking is the coolest way to be able to reach your goals yet fail every single day. And it doesn't sound like it makes any sense, but if day 1 you nail all 3, right? There's that motivation, and never rely on motivation ever. It will fail you every time. But you have that motivation on day 1, and then day 2, you're like, okay, I'm going to nail all 3 again. But your kid's soccer practice doesn't get done till 8 o'clock at night. So now, boom, all of a sudden you can't meet your goal of not eating after 7 p.m. because you haven't even had dinner yet. But you got 2 out of the 3. Okay, fine. You got 2 out of the 3, which means those 2 things still took you steps forward, regardless of the fact that you didn't necessarily take a step back, but you weren't able to take that 3rd step forward. And then the next day, your goal is, okay, I couldn't do that yesterday. So that one, that eating after 7 p.m., I'm going to make sure I don't do that. And I'm going to try to get my steps in. But boom, you have meetings all day at work and you wind up with 5,000 steps. Well, if your average was 5,000 steps in the past, right? And now you made a new goal to hit 10,000 steps every day. You're going from 35,000 steps to 70,000 steps. If you only got 10,000 on 3 of the days of the week, but you still got your other 5, you're still at 50,000 steps, which means you made huge progress going forward. Triple habit stacking is whether you can do it for work. Like if you're a salesperson, right? There are things as a salesperson that you know if you do X, Y, and Z, you will be successful, right? But we don't do it because we're like, oh no, I need that new shiny thing. I need the new app that's going to help me. I need the new Salesforce, that app that's going on. Like we need something else. No, stay consistent. Find the things that are going to make an impact that don't necessarily have huge changes in your life, but that you can do consistently. And if you hit 2 of the 3 on a regular basis, you're going to make huge progress forward. Look at yourself now. Look at yourself 6 months from now. If you only hit 1, 2, obviously you want 3, but if you only hit a little bit, you're going to make the progress that you want. Triple habit stacking is the easiest way to get to a goal with still failing every day.
I love it, man. We probably like just the people like, huh. You know, it takes a minute for people to absorb it, but the concept is real. I mean, you're always ahead of where you were, but you're still, a step behind where you need to be.
Yes, exactly.
It's amazing how it plays, but I love it. I love it. Mike, it's been real, man. I would love to continue this, but maybe we'll do a second comeback, and there's more to talk about, definitely. And I enjoyed this time, and folks, I do hope that you're really seeing the value of this discussion here today, and just take as much from it as you can, because a lot of this you can apply and you will see result. There's no doubt. I mean, just the last piece here, if you apply it exactly how Mike described it, you will see a tremendous amount of change and results, positive results in your life. So, Mike, thank you so much for being with us, man. It's been real.
Great talking to you. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. So, folks, this is it. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. As for me, Hurricane H, we'll be talking soon. Bye for now.